How do you explain the mystery of God in the Trinity? What image works for you? For us as humans, you have to understand that every image we have of God, even the traditional images of God as Father, Son, and Spirit, they all seem to fall short because God is so much more than the images and metaphors and visuals and words that we have to describe God. Some people like the traditional image of God as Father, Son, and Spirit, and that's okay. And know that God is more than the image of an old man, Jesus, and a bird. I grew up with that image a lot. And I've been invited in my life to expand my horizon and think about that images of God, that mystery of love, and how that can be expressed. And two images stay with me that I keep in my heart and in my mind and in my spirit as I think of this feast. One is kind of quirky. I notice this every time I go to a grocery store and I walk down the frozen aisle section and I see a pint of Neapolitan ice cream. One ice cream, 3 flavors, chocolate and vanilla and strawberry. It seems pretty quirky, but it reminds me that God can be found in all things and can teach us that God is way more than what we can ever ask or imagine or think or feel. The second image is one of my favorite images of the Trinity. It's an icon. This is an icon of the 15th century by Andrei Rublev, is the original. This is a painting of that. And it's an icon of the Trinity. Andrei Rublev was a Russian iconographer, and this Trinity is from the Trinity of the Old Testament. It was inspired by the Genesis story of Abraham and Sarah wanting to have children, and they encounter 3 messengers from God. And so this image shows 3 figures sitting at table. There's a real image of Eucharistic undertones in this. But what really strikes me about this icon is this contemplative gaze upon each other of love. And there are 3 images almost of a way they're sitting at table and seated facing each other as one of equality, of unity, and of love, that community. And lastly, the icon reminds me that God is the center of that relationship, that expression of relationship of love as Trinity, this triune God of love. That's an image that stays with me. What image stays with you? What do you carry with you? And to think about that on this Feast of the Trinity. The gospel we hear today is from Matthew. It's the end of his gospel, chapter 28, verses 16 to 20. It's post-resurrection. He talks about preaching to the 11 disciples, knowing that Judas had gone off and died. And he gives them what's called the Great Commission. You're sent, the disciples are sent to preach and to baptize in that Trinitarian formula. Jesus exhorts them, saying, don't be afraid. I am with you always. And he encourages them to preach to all nations, knowing that don't leave anybody out. Don't exclude anybody. Don't restrict anybody, but preach this message of love to all people and know that I am with you always. Again, after this feast of Easter, we hear again simple messages of love. It seems very simple and straightforward. Preach the gospel of love to all people. This Trinitarian relationship of love. And the challenge then, too, is to find God in all things. Be open to how God comes to us, is made known to us in love in all things. And even if it happens to be in a grocery store. So this week, pay attention to how God comes to you in love. How do you find God within yourself and in your relationships, in your community of love that nurtures you, that surrounds you, and encourages you to go out and witness God's love to all people? How do you find God in the center of your relationships? And may this love empower us to reach out and serve others with no borders and no restrictions, no boundaries and no limits, because God's love is beyond our imagination, beyond our telling, and God promises to be with us always. This God of love that heals us, that gives life, and that brings forth life for all people. Let us serve in that love of God this day and every day of our lives. Amen.